Hello and welcome to Useful Idiots Monday Morning, where we react to the Sunday morning news shows that we watch so that you don't have to. And look how different Aaron looks. He must have been, I don't know, sunbathing or really, letting his hair down, as they say. No, this is, of course, we're so excited to have with us the inimitable Rania Khalek, live from Beirut.
Hello, Katie. It's good to be with you. Glad to host with you here, to co-host with you here.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Add a little, women, like now it's just a women's show.
Yeah, exactly. Add a little feminine energy, a little Druze energy.
Yeah, a little Jew and Druze energy.
Jew and Druze, yeah. That's good. That's what we got to show. This is the Jew and Druze edition of Monday Morning. Yeah.
That is a tongue twister.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Can I say something before you start showing the clips? I feel like we should also, speaking of like feminine energy, I mean, Mexico has a new president.
It's true, and she's Jewish, and she's pro-Palestine.
Yeah, Claudia Sheinbaum.
And you interviewed her, didn't you?
Yeah, I interviewed her last year with Zoe Alexandra of People's Dispatch. People should go check it out. It's on YouTube. Right. Yeah, lady president, you guys, first woman president of Mexico, and also not a fascist. So that's fantastic.
Hillary Clinton must be so upset. Yeah.
I'm sure she's like thrilled right now. She's like, because she loves women.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
not at all petty or jealous or anything.
No.
There's actually a funny. Let me see if I can find it. There's a funny image of her. Trying to find it, but I tweeted out so many things defending Brianna Joy Gray. It's hard for me to find the tweet that I did. Anyway, it's a funny picture of Hillary. I'll retweet it later. So shall we start with our show and play the first clip, which is, of course, as always, from Meet the Press?
I love to, because I love Meet the Press. So I'm really excited for.
Also, we should announce we're doing a live show in New York City. If you're around, everyone, September.
Yeah. Come check it out. If you're friends and if you're enemies, don't come.
Yeah, don't come. Yeah. Just tweet about it. Yeah.
Just tweet about it.
All right. Let's take a look at Meet the Press.
Good Sunday morning. I'm Peter Alexander in for Kristen Welker. For the first time in American history, a former president has been convicted of a crime. This past week, a Manhattan jury concluded beyond a reasonable doubt that Donald Trump falsified business records in order to influence the 2016 election, finding him guilty on all 34 counts, felony crimes. Mr. Trump, who chose not to testify, instead vented his anger outside the courtroom, claiming the trial was rigged against him and vowing to appeal.
This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial.
Look at his lawyer next to him. He looks like so old school, like mafia boss.
Yeah, he looks like he's like, okay, so did I send the horse's head to the right person?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. Totally. You're going to sleep with the fishes. Members of the jury.
Did I remember to wipe the fingerprints off the gun?
Oh, so ridiculous.
I hope so.
No disrespect to our Italian viewers. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Did we just do a racism?
We did apologize. A racism. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
A disgrace. They wouldn't give us a venue change. We were at 5% or 6% in this district, in this area. This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people.
In the days since, the former president's allies, including vice presidential hopefuls, have lined up to rail against the trial and its outcome and have attacked Democrats, claiming the fix was in from the start.
What happened there was outrageous. And you're right, the American people see it. This is a purely political exercise, not a legal one.
This is the most outrageous travesty I've ever seen. And the problem here is Democrats have crossed this line. They have crossed the line in which now the court system is a political weapon.
This is the weaponization of the justice system against their political opponent. This is a justice system that hunts Republicans while protecting Democrats. This was certainly a hoax, a sham.
Next up, Mr. Trump's sentencing. That's set for July 11th, just days before he's supposed to.
My birthday, guys.
Oh,
if I were shit lib, I'd be like, that's my birthday present. His sentencing.
Officially accept the Republican Party's nomination. With Mr. Trump's other criminal cases in Washington, Florida, and Georgia all bogged down with significant delays, the Manhattan case is likely to be the only trial Mr. Trump faces before Election Day. The question now, will the verdict impact the view of voters? Our first indication, a poll conducted in the days after the verdict, shows that a majority of voters across the political spectrum say Mr. Trump's conviction
This isn't okay.
will not affect their vote.
Oh, sorry. Did I do that or did you?
No, there's my fault. Sorry. This is kind of fascinating because a majority of all voters, so Republicans and Democrats and independents, say that this will not affect their vote, which really puts into, I mean, obviously it's newsworthy, this verdict, but it does underscore how our media is obsessed with this story while
Americans
it has
are not
a
like,
real, or they are obsessed with it, but not in a way that'll change the vote, right? So like the Democrats who are obsessed with it, are so happy about this, but it's not going to change the way they vote. Same with Republicans and independents, which is kind of fascinating.
Yeah. So it is fascinating, and I wonder if part of it is because of the actual reason for his for the verdict. It's like, okay,
Right.
so he gave hush money. Like, it's kind of something that everybody's kind of, I think that generally Americans have a view as most politicians as being corrupt. Like, if this was something maybe a bit more unique, maybe people would care more, or something that maybe affected their own lives, or, I mean, at this point you have Biden overseeing a genocide in Gaza.
Right.
So it's like, this just seems so minuscule. Not that I'm saying that's why people don't care. That's why I don't care.
Yeah.
I think moreover, Trump did a lot of horrible things, as every president does, but like, this seems like, of all the horrible things that he did,
Right.
to be like not that important to me.
Of course.
Like,
Right.
Like,
Why
Trump
not going after Soleimani?
Right. Like, he murdered a general of a
Right.
country that's recognized by the international community as a country, like, and he did it in another country, and that's a crime. He dropped the mother of all bombs in Afghanistan. He tried to overthrow the government of Venezuela by creating a parallel government led by Juan Guaido. I mean, you could go on and on about the things that happened during not just the Trump administration, but basically every president is like a walking serial killer. So I'm not really, it's just hard to like feel connected to this particular trial.
Right. I agree.
And on top of that, it's just everything's so disingenuous. Like, obviously everything Republicans say are so disingenuous. Like, what, you really think that the court system is being weaponized? Like, you guys run the court system.
Yeah.
Literally. Like, it's been stacked with right wingers, please.
Right.
And then on top of that, like, I just think the country's so polarized that whatever happens to Trump, it's going to be seen as like either him being a martyr or as him being exactly what I think he is, which is a criminal who shouldn't be president, like, depending on which side you're on.
Right. Totally. Yeah.
And now that Mr. Trump has been convicted, the Biden campaign is looking for ways to shake up a race that has largely remained stagnant. This morning, NBC News reports the Biden team is now accelerating its timetable to get more.
Okay. What is with that face?
And maybe they can't find a photo of him not making that face. Like, is that the only face he makes now?
I don't know. Yeah. They're increasingly awful faces. Yeah.
I would sue if somebody used a photo
I know.
like that of me.
Yeah, I know.
For
And
like
this is
libel.
And this is like a network that likes Biden too.
Yeah. So it just shows you what they didn't have very many good photos to
Good
choose
options.
from.
Yeah. Yeah.
Aggressive plans it had been holding on to for later this summer. That includes sharpening its message to argue that Mr. Trump is more focused on himself than he is on voters. President Biden, who mostly stayed away from commenting during the trial, finally weighed in.
The jury heard 5 weeks of evidence, 5 weeks. And after careful deliberation, the jury reached a unanimous verdict. They found Donald Trump guilty on all 34 felony counts. Now he'll be given the opportunity, as he should, to appeal that decision just like everyone else has that opportunity. That's how the American system of justice works. And it's reckless, it's dangerous, it's irresponsible for anyone to say this was rigged just because they don't like the verdict.
Oh, that sounds familiar. Let's see. Who did that the other day? Oh, right. That would be Joe Biden calling the ICC's decision to seek arrest warrants outrageous. I guess he doesn't really respect the rule of law.
I mean, he does respect the rule of law. Katie, he respects the rule of law as far as he wants it to go. Like, it's just, this is all, it's also, look,
Selective.
It's totally selective, but also it's just, I mean, when it comes to what you're going to go after Trump for, like, I just don't understand how Democrats like chose to go after this instead of the fact that he like incited an insurrection
Right.
to try to stop to try to stop Biden becoming president. Like, it's also just from a strategic viewpoint. If Democrats were going to spend time trying to go after their Republican opponent, like they don't even do it right. Like they actually could have done something that made him look really bad and that revved up their base, but they don't even do that right. Whatever. They're such idiots. They
really
like don't know how to play politics.
Right. True. Yeah. Yep. Well, let's go to the next clip, which is Doug Burgum, who, of course, challenged Trump, was running in the primary. He's the governor. And now he's basically auditioning to be vice president. Let's take a look at what he said when he was on Face the Nation.
If they were running for president and changing those business records to obscure donations to their own campaign, you know what I'm saying. This isn't just filing error.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but most Americans cannot explain it. Many of the legal experts, of the legal experts that stood on the curb outside the courthouse for 6 weeks can't explain it. So Americans are going to come back to the issues that affect them because this trial outcome doesn't affect them. The inflation affects them.
It does. And I want to talk about some of those issues more in depth with you in a few minutes. We just put up a graph to show you our polling. It's 2/3 of those polled said they are watching closely.
Okay, so that's like her. I think Margaret thinks that this is an own, right? Because he's saying that it doesn't affect them. And she's saying, well, it does because look how many people are following it. But we just saw that other poll showing that it's not going to affect the way they vote. And of course, arguing that or pointing out that they follow it, and it should be noted that it's less than 50% in all cases. I mean, it doesn't even get to above 35%, but that doesn't mean that it affects you. So.
Exactly. No, it's. I mean, look, we all know all of the mainstream news stations are basically skew towards Biden. They find, Trump to be like gross and weird, and that's fine, whatever. But all that said, like they really do twist everything to try to make it look like the news story they're covering is something people care about. They actually don't. If you do look at the other poll, and she could have showed that. And he was, that guy sucks. That guy, Doug, whatever.
Yeah. North Dakota governor. Yeah.
Right. But he's not. But what he's saying isn't wrong. Like, it's like a lot of people have no connection to this whatsoever. Like they don't have a stake in the game of like, Trump paid hush money or not, unless they're Democrats, like really ardent team Democrat, they want him to, be jailed. And if they're team Republican, they don't. But like this doesn't affect their daily lives. It doesn't affect their jobs. It doesn't affect their bank accounts. So at the end of the day, it's like, I think really hard for people to care about something like this in particular.
Right. I agree. But I think it's hard for them to get that because they spend so much time covering it.
And also they're doing great economically. Like these are people who are like, wearing very fancy clothes. They're basically millionaires who do propaganda for billionaire owners of news channels. So like they're completely disconnected from your average American. And so they'll take whatever polls they want that, suit their arguments for this or that day. And that's the end of it. And so it's like, and also even just watching that conversation, like all these clips we've just watched about this, both of us are just kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
Like it's not even as like political people who spend all our time consuming political news and watching this stuff play out. This is like the least interesting thing happening, at least as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Right. Well, I mean, they had to talk about this the whole time so that they didn't have to talk about Rafa.
About what?
About Rafa. Oh, about
I don't know what that is. I watch the Sunday news show, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Rafa. Yeah. Rafa. Is that a new singer? Is that Rafi's protege? Yeah.
It's like the name of somebody's baby that they just had, like a celebrity's baby.
Yeah. That would be a good celebrity baby.
That would be a good name.
One of maybe one of
you guys are watching.
Hadads.
Hadids. Yeah,
one of the Hadids could name their kid that. Yeah.
Any of you are pregnant, I have an idea for a baby name. Is it like it's gender neutral?
Yeah, it is. It's true. It's a good. That's a good point. Yeah. Good
maybe that's how we can get the Sunday news shows to cover Rafa if somebody famous names their child that.
Yeah, I totally co-sign that. Yeah. And then they won't, but they'll still get to do a gender reveal party.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, that'll also get Rafa attention because otherwise no one else will cover it, even if there's like massacres at tents.
Right.
Like tent massacres.
Right. Yeah. Right. Which barely, I mean, why would that get coverage?
Why would that even happen? I mean, Israel wouldn't do that. So,
yeah. And by the way, I should have said this at the beginning so people are not in suspense. Aaron is fine. He's just traveling right now. Okay. So let's go to our next clip. Let's skip forward to clip 2. And this is, of course, this is John Kirby on This Week with George Stephanopoulos.
I feel like we should trigger warning whenever,
I know you're right.
Like trigger warning, liar, crisis actor about to appear on screen.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. John Kirby, great actor, gets emotional and cries over Israeli victims. And when it comes to Palestinian victims, his response is, war is war, and this stuff happens.
Yeah.
Including thousands of children. Far too many have been badly wounded. It's time to begin this new stage. For the hostages to come home. For Israel.
Okay, well, he looks like a tired baby, like wiping his eye.
I mean, like, this is how he's talking about a genocide. He's just like can't be bothered to like open his eyes. But to be fair,
what a metaphor, right? He can't open his eyes to the genocide.
He can't open his eyes to doubt. Yeah, gotta keep them closed. I don't want to see the dead babies.
Yeah,
that my bombs are killing.
But he does want to see all the dead babies that he saw. Remember the beheaded babies he saw in photos. Also the burnt photos of burnt mother and daughter tied together. Again, all these things that didn't happen.
Yeah, all these things that were photographed only for Biden's eyes.
Right. Yeah. No wonder he's
To be secure, for the suffering to stop. It's time for this war to end.
That was President Biden on Friday calling on Hamas to agree to a ceasefire deal with Israel. White House National Security Committee.
Sorry, even the premise of calling on like Hamas to agree to a ceasefire deal with Israel. I know he's going to say more things about this, but can we just note that Biden said this is an Israeli ceasefire proposal that the Israelis don't actually agree with?
Right.
And it's plagiarized from Hamas's ceasefire proposal from a month ago.
Right.
That both the Americans and the Israelis were like, nope. Anyways.
Yeah. Right. So unreasonable, except it turns out to be this thing that they're now pushing. And we'll talk about the thing, but
Communication Advisor John Kirby joins us right now. John, thanks for joining us as always. Let's begin with that proposal the president laid out there late this week. Israel has said that this was something they agreed to, but their conditions have not been met. Where does this stand exactly?
Well, it is an Israeli proposal, one that they arrived at after intense diplomacy with our own national security team and over at the State Department. Sorry,
I just need to reiterate, those are all lies. This is not an Israeli proposal. Not an Israeli proposal. The Israelis have not agreed to it.
Right.
They're opposed to it at the moment.
It's a phased approach. George.
I mean, I think what happened, is that, what happened was like, I mean, as you pointed out, this does have stuff that Hamas had agreed to, right? But there's a lot of drama and confusion about this. But they are like, basically, so the Americans, Hamas didn't agree to this and Israel did. And then once Hamas started agreeing to this, then Israel didn't agree to this. And
I don't think that's exactly even it, actually. Israel never agreed to anything. Like, Israel refuses to agree to any cessation of hostilities that's more than temporary because they refuse to agree to anything that includes a permanent ceasefire.
Right, but they agreed to certain parts of this. Then
everything,
right. They agreed to certain parts of this. Then Hamas disagreed, right? Because Hamas was like, if you want to negotiate, then can you please stop bombing us? Which
Hamas's whole thing was we will negotiate for a permanent ceasefire. Like the issue was about permanency of ending the genocide, basically.
Right.
And Israel's like, no, that's a non-starter for the Israelis.
Right.
Like they're basically like, no, we will not negotiate anything that includes us stopping the bombing of Gaza.
Right. Yes. But so all right, yes. They put together a proposal, right? That then Hamas rejected.
Because of the temporary nature of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then Biden basically took what Israel said, right? And publicized it. Said it was Israeli, but Netanyahu doesn't actually like it. right?
Well, I think that Biden is trying to put the Israelis in a corner.
Yeah, exactly.
Of like having to either accept it or reject it. And Netanyahu's in a tough spot because of the fact that, like politically, because he needs his right-wing partners in the government to be in a coalition with him, but like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, Bezalel Smotrich, refuse to agree to any cessation of like the war.
Yeah, exactly.
And
so
they're basically
coalition,
right.
Yeah.
And so they're threatening to drop out. But then there's a chance that like the moderate, when I say moderates, I use that with huge air quotes.
Right.
But like the less fascists, the not religious
fascist light, the fascist light,
the secular fascists. Let's call them that actually.
Sure.
The secular fascists are basically like what the Americans view as moderate, might be willing to stay in with Netanyahu and agree to this because they do want it to be closer to over and to continue forever. So I don't know. It's like up to Netanyahu to figure out his like political situation in the country. But ultimately, the Israelis keep insisting they won't have a stop to the war. So the Americans are also trying to give them a victory narrative.
Right. They're trying to give them an out.
Right. They need a victory narrative. And the thing is, there is no victory narrative for the Israelis because even if the Israelis tell themselves, we won because we destroyed Gaza, they didn't eliminate Hamas and they'll never eliminate Hamas.
Exactly.
So they just like lose from the get-go no matter what.
Yeah, which we'll get into in the next clip. Yeah.
That proposal, an Israeli proposal, has been given to Hamas. It was done on Thursday night, our time. We're waiting for an official response from Hamas. We would note that publicly, Hamas officials came out and welcomed this proposal. So what would we hope would happen is they would agree to start phase one as soon as possible. And phase one would allow for some hostages, the elderly, sick, women hostages to get out over a period of 6 weeks, no fighting, more humanitarian assistance in. And while that's all going on, the two sides would sit down and try to negotiate what phase two.
I just want to add, this is literally taken from Hamas's proposal last month that they surprised the Americans and the Israelis with, and the Israelis rejected.
Right.
And that's why it's really funny to try to pass it off as an Israeli proposal now. Also, I just want to point out that everything he's saying could have been done on October 8th.
Right. Exactly. But Rania, they really care about the hostages, I thought. Israel cared about the hostages.
Yeah, Israel cares about the hostages so much they keep killing them.
Right. I mean, that's so important, though, that this could have happened so much earlier. It just shows, again, how little concern. I mean, we know this, but you would never know this from the media coverage and what politicians say because, again, it just like they can't even do their racism, Jewish supremacy right. Like because I guess, or maybe they are doing it right. Like they care so much more about killing Palestinians and saving Jews. And that's their whole shtick, right? Israel's supposed to be a safe place and they care about Jewish lives.
Right.
Anyway, not that that's okay to be an ethno-supremacist state, but that is their lane, right? That's their like raison d'etre, and they can't even do that.
Yeah, because they'll actually ultimately what they wanted to do is just eliminate Palestinians from Gaza so they could take they could take more of Gaza over,
right. Nice
and also get vengeance, also get beachfront property and vengeance. Like,
and vengeance, right.
Colonists like have to do revenge after
to discipline people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
but based on what we're hearing from
tough shit, hostages, we may have to shoot you ourselves, bomb buildings that you're in. And let you, and then of course, like one at least I think died from there not being food.
Yeah, we don't even know how many of the people who were killed on October 7th were killed by Israel, Hamas. Let alone like I mean, because the Israelis like bombed their own people.
Right.
Let
Definitely
alone
more than has been reported in the American press. We can guarantee that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Minister Netanyahu, are we in the situation now where if Hamas says yes, then Israel's going to say no?
Yes.
No, this was an Israeli proposal. We have every expectations that if Hamas agrees to the proposal, as was transmitted to them, an Israeli proposal, that Israel would say yes. Again, all you get in
you know when you like go to the hair salon and they're like, oh, they like try to sell you up on like other things that you don't need.
Yeah, like leave-in conditioner or something.
Yeah, or like, oh, like let me do some treatment for your hair. Like your
yeah.
hair needs it. It's so dry, and you're like, my hair, like I just got a treatment. You know what I mean? You're like, you know, you don't need it. That's like kind of the John Kirby energy I'm getting.
Like he's like pushing something.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Or like if you have a car that you're getting fixed.
Oh, like right. Just a smarmy salesman.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's trying to sell, except he's trying to sell a deal. Yeah. A deal. Yeah. I got a great deal for you. Yeah.
in a yes right now, George, and it's not a small thing, but what you get is the start of phase one. So you get some hostages coming out, initial hostages.
He has like Steve Kornacki energy, you know, when Steve Kornacki's like showing the map or like showing statistics, like, so what we have over here is like that's how he's talking.
You get some calm, you get some more humanitarian assistance, maybe up to 600 trucks, and then the two sides can start talking about phase two. So Prime Minister Netanyahu's team, in fact, his foreign minister, again, just said that they welcome this this announcement by the president, and that they did, in fact, agree that this was their proposal.
Like a sports announcer. He's like,
yeah, exactly.
He's like a snake oil salesman mixed in with a game show host, mixed in with like
genocide apologist.
Yeah, exactly.
Genocide launcher.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it was. I think sometimes I think these spokespeople were created in some weird laboratory.
Lab,
like they're not like there's not like actual like human soul behind that.
Right. I know.
It's
well,
like
when
robot.
he dies, they should do an autopsy and see what's in there.
Yeah.
Well, our apologies. We have one more John Kirby clip.
Trigger warning.
Trigger warning, yeah. And again, it's with George Stephanopoulos. So let's hear what he has to say.
Said Hamas is no longer capable of carrying out large-scale terror attacks. Is that based on new U.S. intelligence, and do the Israelis agree?
It is based on accumulation of our own intelligence assessments across the intelligence agencies that militarily speaking, Hamas is in no position to conduct another attack like October 7th. Now, we're also not saying that Hamas has been wiped off the face of the map. We've not said that Hamas has no military capabilities. We've not said that they don't still represent a viable threat to the Israeli people. Of course they do. But they don't have the military capabilities to do what they did on the 7th of October. And so from a military perspective only, George, as President Biden said, the Israelis have accomplished most of their goals in Gaza.
That's bullshit.
It's such bullshit, yeah.
Well, you could have said that on October 6th. You could have been like, nobody would have guessed on October 6th Hamas would have the military capability to do what they did on October 7th.
True, right. And also, like, I mean, this is just shifting goalposts, right? Because Israel set out as their goal the total elimination of Hamas, which obviously isn't going to happen. They obviously can't do that. So now that they're shifting it and saying the goal is making it so that they can't do another October 7th. And of course, like, if that's all they cared about, like, then the Israelis could have just moved their divisions to the wall, kept up, you know, surveillance. I'm not justifying this morally or ethically. It's like a continuation of the
you're just using logic. You're using logic.
Yeah. Like, you just go to the wall, you keep up the Iron Dome stuff, all the like rocket protection stuff, surveillance, and then another October 7th obviously can't happen when you're doing that, right? But they don't care about, just like they don't care about the hostages, they don't really care about, this is not the issue. The issue is, as you said, Rania, like purging Gaza of Palestinians, punishing Palestinians for daring to fight their occupation. And again, they're just like, it's so pathetic the way they coddle Israel. They're like, good job, Israel. Like they treat it like a cute dog as opposed to like a homicidal dog. Yeah, you really showed Hamas.
It's like they're talking to like, no, it's like they're talking to like a school shooter, but they're like, letting them keep their weapons. They're like, okay, look, you did what you came to do. You shot all the kids. All right. You did good. Okay. You're safe now. And what's so crazy about it too is like, I mean, this just goes back to the way this entire conflict's not the right word. This entire conquering of Palestine is covered in the media and the way spokespeople talk about it. It's just, dude, like, this is all about making the colonizers safe. Like, you stole people's land and you kill them regularly and you put them in concentration and death camps. We want to make sure the people that are serial killers are safe. Yeah. Like, we want to make sure they're safe from repercussions from being serial killers. Like, that's,
and also we fund this serial killer.
We want to prevent any future slave revolts. Like, could you, I mean, imagine, imagine like after like Haiti or something, they're like, well, how can we make the French feel safe? Like, they're not going to be subjected to any more slave revolts by the people they own, by the people they literally own and forced to do labor for them. Like, the premise of everything is just so insane. It's like we live in completely different worlds. Like, being like John Kirby and everybody else. I mean,
it's really disgusting. All right, let's see. What do we got next? We got a little bit of, this is a good one. Speaker Johnson talking to Shannon at Fox News Sundays. And of course, he's talking about the invitation of Netanyahu to address Congress.
Joining me now to speak about this and much more, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson. Mr. Speaker, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Hey, Shannon, great to be with you as always.
Okay, so let's start there in the Middle East, because you are trying to get something to the floor that deals with the ICC. There are a number of international bodies that are condemning Israel or the prime minister, in their case, asking for arrest warrants. It seemed like the White House was interested in doing something that would push back on the ICC. Now it seems that they have changed course. That's not going to be the case. House Foreign Affairs Committee Chair Michael McCall says this: we want something that can become law. We're not really interested in a messaging bill. And it sounds like there is bipartisan agreement in doing something to push back on the ICC. But with the signal we're getting from the White House now, what could you pass that you think the president might sign?
Well, we hope to actually determine that by this afternoon. These negotiations have been ongoing with our Democrat colleagues, and we are working very hard, as Chairman McCall indicated there. We don't want this to just be a political exercise. We think it's important for Republicans and Democrats to stand together and send a message to the international community that the abuses of the International Criminal Court, the ICC, cannot be allowed to go forward. And
the abuses of the ICC.
Yeah,
the abuses
ICC
that they're
known.
trying to follow international law.
Yeah, the ICC is known for just constantly abusing.
Yeah,
just running
especially
rampant around the world.
Western powers. I mean, that is why they're called, like, what's their unofficial name? The International Caucasian Court. Because they like, always go after African leaders, except for like one or two.
Well, that's only because, Katie, that's only because only in Africa and like other places where the leaders are not white do they, like Slavic leaders too, by the way.
Right.
They're the only ones who do bad things.
Right.
Yeah.
They're not as evolved as the as Western white leaders.
Right. Yeah.
The idea that President Biden would backtrack on that, he would disagree with us, that we should impose sanctions on ICC officials when they are threatening to arrest the Prime Minister of Israel and the Defense Minister of Israel in the midst of their war for survival is to us unconscionable. So look.
And reminder, Mike Johnson is an evangelical who wants Jews to go back to Israel where they can convert, accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior.
Or burn in an everlasting pit of fire.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. So
I mean, he's giving you the option to convert. Like, I don't know why.
It's true, but I think there's a limited number. I think there's only 400 slots. So maybe
you gotta like first come first serve. It's first come first serve.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Oh shit.
First come first serve. Second come first burn or something. Yeah.
I hope that the White House sees the light on this. We've got to do this. And we need to do it next week. And my intention.
Also, what's up with the background here? It looks like they're trying to create heaven or something.
It looks like there's a cross.
I know, you're right.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that was. Mike Johnson is scary. I find him to be a frightening figure.
It's undermined by his boyish, not boyish good look, boyish scary looks.
Yeah. He's
like he looks so like a little kid, kind of. Yeah.
His little glasses. Yeah. He's like, I'm harmless, not really.
Yeah.
Is to bring that legislation to the floor. If we have to do it Republicans only, we will, but I certainly hope the Democrats will come along with us on it.
Well, and you did get Democrats to come along now on this invitation to Prime Minister Netanyahu to come speak and address Congress. You did get Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries to join when it seemed like they may not at one point, but not everybody's excited, including Democrat or Independent Senator Bernie Sanders. He says it's a very sad day for our country that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been invited by leaders from both parties to address a joint meeting of the U.S. Congress. Netanyahu, he calls him a war criminal, says he's not going to attend.
Oh, Bernie Sanders hates the Jews, so.
Oh, Rania, from your lips to Mike Johnson's ears. Ready?
Yeah, let's hear it.
He does in a fuller statement say Israel's got a right to defend itself, but not to kill tens of thousands of civilians, destroy universities, hospitals, homes. How do you respond to his characterization?
Bernie Sanders is parroting the talking points of Hamas and the Ayatollah in Iran. If that's the side he wants to choose, so be it. Our Democrat colleagues have to.
It's like that meme that's literally like everyone I disagree with is Hamas. So now Bernie Sanders is Hamas.
Yeah. And apparently the Ayatollah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, you know that, Rania, because as Emily Schrader just pointed out during your debate on Pierce Morgan, and I highly suggest people watch that. Also watch Rania on the Katie Halper show. We covered that. But as Emily Schrader, the Israeli shill, the American shill for Israel, pointed out, you actually, Rania, live under Iranian control in Lebanon, and they're the real colonists.
I mean, I'm in Lebanon. I'm in Beirut right now, and just outside my door, there are several Iranians with guns, telling me what to say and do. And they're also, apparently, she told me that Iran has colonized Lebanon. So
exactly.
There's just a colony, Iranian colonies everywhere. So everything I say here, let's just assume an Iranian told me to say it, according to Emily Schrader, who is indeed
well, you and Bernie Sanders are taking talking points from the same leader.
Well, yeah, I mean, Bernie Sanders is more Hamas. I'm more Ayatollah.
Well, I guess, but Bernie is both, as Johnson just pointed out.
Make a choice. Are they going to stand with our most important ally in the Middle East at this most desperate time, as has traditionally been the case in Washington? We've had bipartisan agreement that we have to stand in solidarity with Israel. Or are they going to take this new side and stand with Hamas and the Ayatollah? Bernie Sanders.
Those are your options, folks. You either stand with Mike Johnson or you stand with Iran and Hamas. I mean, look. If I'm forced to choose between those two things, I mean, you're really putting me in a corner. No one can choose. But you know who can choose Mike Johnson? Democrats, who, despite this guy being almost a fascist, Mike Johnson's crazy. He is a religious, racist psychopath. Democrats will stand by him to stand next to another nut job called Netanyahu. That's actually insane. Like, it's crazy that Bernie Sanders is the only one. I mean, there might be a handful of other Congress people, I imagine, but
in the Senate,
the only senator. Who's like not gonna attend. It's crazy. Like, the American political system is completely nuts.
They'll stand next to this guy. They'll stand next to John Hagee. Remember at the Defend Israel rally, this guy who's an insane guy who's so crazy that John McCain had to disavow him.
John Hagee said Hitler was sent by God. Didn't he?
He was. He's a hunter. To get you to Israel.
Is chosen aside. I hope that our other colleagues in the Democrat Party will stand up and do the right thing. We desperately need it. Israel desperately needs it. I spoke to Prime Minister Netanyahu as recently as Wednesday about all of this, and he's deeply concerned. You know, we did issue that invitation for the joint address to Congress. I'm really grateful it finally went out. I would note that I sent the draft of the letter, the joint letter, back in mid-March to Chuck Schumer. It took him quite some time to agree. But we have finally gotten that done. Prime Minister Netanyahu is anxious to come and address us, and I hope that we can get that scheduled here in the coming weeks.
Okay, I want to get to the Trump verdict and
all right, so that's interesting, and we have another clip related to this Bibi invitation. Let's take a look at Hakeem Jeffries, the Democrat from New York, talking to Meet the Press.
I'm sure he's going to be very anti-Mike Johnson because they're like in different parties.
Exactly.
That believe in different things, right?
Totally.
Let's hear it.
Ask you about what's been taking place overseas right now in news that was made just this morning. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel just accepted the invitation from you and your congressional leadership colleagues to address a joint session of Congress. We don't have a date for that yet, but the Senate's top Democrat, Chuck Schumer, recently called Netanyahu, quote, a major obstacle to peace. So do you agree?
Okay, before we look at this, let's actually look at the clip. Wilson, let's play the video of Schumer making those comments about Netanyahu. And this was from March. Because you really have to see this to recognize how ridiculous it is that they're now inviting Netanyahu.
Fourth major obstacle to peace is Israel. The fourth major obstacle to peace is Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
First, he sounds like he's reading from the Haggadah at the Seder. It's like the parsley is for the fourth question.
Is that what it's like? I don't think I've ever been to a Seder.
Yeah, you got to come.
Not because I'm not Jewish, but because obviously, like I don't like, according to people would just be like, oh, she doesn't like Jews if she doesn't know what it sounds like to be at a Seder.
Right, at a Seder. Well, you have to come to one of our Seders. Yeah.
Well, no one's ever invited me.
Well, you're invited to the Halper Seder.
Thank you.
Also believe Prime Minister Netanyahu has lost his way by allowing his political survival to take the precedence over the best interests of Israel. He has put himself in coalition with far-right extremists like Ministers Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, and as a result, he has been too willing to tolerate the civilian toll in Gaza, which is pushing support for Israel worldwide to historic lows. Israel cannot survive if it becomes a pariah. At this critical juncture, I believe a new election is the only way to allow for a healthy and open decision-making process about the future of Israel.
So everything he says is like placed in the context of Israel and Israel's future and Israel, not because what Israel's doing isn't horrible, or what Netanyahu's doing isn't horrible because it's starving Palestinians and killing their babies and like destroying and crushing. Yeah, it's because it's not good for Israel and Israel's image. Like imagine that. Like there's a country that's literally just massacring children on purpose and destroying hospitals and like summarily executing doctors. And they're like, we shouldn't support this and they have to stop doing that because it like makes them look really bad.
Right.
Like that's your concern.
Yeah.
Because Palestinians aren't human to these people. It is really, but yeah, that was so light and soft and it was all wrapped in Israel's needs.
Yeah.
But for Mike Johnson.
And then also he has to say, Schumer, of course, has to say, at the end, it's not in this clip, but he's like, when it winds down, they should have a new election. So it is a little awkward saying that someone has lost his way and then being like, come on over to Congress. We'd love to host you. So let's go back to how Hakeem Jeffries dealt with this. We can start it at the beginning of the clip. Oh, and as TLZ pointed out, this is important hilarious that Schumer still votes for all things Israel to continue the genocide. Even though it's being run apparently by a prime minister, who has lost his way and is in cahoots with the far right. I guess can't save Israel from itself.
Yeah.
Place overseas right now in news that was made just this morning. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel just accepted the invitation from you and your congressional leadership colleagues to address a joint session of Congress. We don't have a date for that yet, but the Senate's top Democrat, Chuck Schumer, recently called Netanyahu, quote, a major obstacle to peace. So do you agree with Schumer's assessment that Netanyahu is a major obstacle to peace?
Well, it's my hope that the Prime Minister, upon his arrival in the United States Congress, will address the Biden peace plan that has been put forth that I think comprehensively provides a way forward to bring the hostages home, to end the conflict in Gaza, to allow for a just and lasting peace to be put into place, which is what every reasonable person
Is he a major obstacle to peace, though, sort of my question?
It's my hope that Prime Minister Netanyahu, consistent with what has been done by the Israeli War Cabinet, which is to unanimously adopt the Biden peace plan, will conduct himself in a manner consistent with that Israeli War Cabinet. It's on Hamas, as far as I can tell, as President Biden indicated, to accept the peace plan so we can end this conflict and move towards a just and lasting.
So you don't have any.
I like the way he's like, it's on Hamas, as far as I can tell. He's like, I don't really know what the hell I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's on the slaves, okay? It's on the slaves to accept the peace proposal. Right. And also on top of all that, I swear, like watching these shows, Katie, like you would have no idea that Gaza is just being constantly destroyed. Like everything, it's just like another world. Like, are you people not seeing the stuff we're seeing? It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Sorry.
No,
it's really, it's like infuriating.
He also looks like such a sociopath.
Because he's just like, what do I have to say so that AIPAC still likes me?
Yeah, exactly.
That's all he cares about right now.
Right.
That's all he cares about.
Criticism of Netanyahu's conducting.
Oh, this is a good one. Hold on. Let's back this up a little bit.
And move towards a just and lasting.
So you don't have any criticism of Netanyahu's conducting of this war to this point?
I think that there will be ample room to be able.
So he's saying, he is not saying, yes, I have some criticism of what Netanyahu's done this entire time. It's just
able to assess what was done right, what may have been done wrong. I certainly criticized the Israeli airstrike from earlier this week. It was a tragedy. It should not have happened. And we mourn for the loss of people.
Okay, so let's take a look at this alleged criticism in which Hakeem Jeffries engaged. This is what he tweeted out about the tent massacre. Deeply saddened by the killing of innocent civilians in Rafah that resulted from a tragic Israeli airstrike. Okay, so not that Israel killed them. That didn't happen. there was a killing that resulted from a tragic Israeli airstrike, which of course suggests that this was a mistake. But then he immediately pivots to every single hostage must be released. Palestinian civilians must be protected. Hamas must be defeated. We must find an immediate path to a just and lasting peace. Yeah, that's so critical.
Yeah, it's like really sad that Israel beheaded children in an airstrike in Rafah. It was really tragic. Really but the premise of everything that Israel is doing continues. I still want Hamas to be eliminated, and also the hostages. Also, I'll just throw in a Palestinian civilians. I mean, it's like, it's all contradictory because on the one hand, he is a Democrat. So he does have to like pretend to care a little bit. On the other hand,
he has to pretend like he's not a Republican.
Yeah. And then he has to, and on the other hand, he needs those AIPAC
dollars. Yeah, totally.
Because he's a huge AIPACer. Like he receives a ton of money from AIPAC and the Israel lobby in general. And that's all he cares about is keeping them happy while still pretending to be like, pay lip service to like some talking points about like, I don't want people to die, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm open to criticizing Israel's genocidal war by saying it's tragic that they accidentally killed people in a tent.
And the way he's like, let's, after the fact, after the genocide, we can just figure out, what's done wrong, what's done right. It's not a basketball game, dude. It's not like, let's see where I didn't perform my best so I can do better next time.
Right. We're going to debrief. We're going to do a real debrief after this. Yeah. Unpack it. Yeah. Well, you mentioned, Rania, how we're not even talking about what's happening in Palestine. This is all like horse race politics. So this is, I think, an important clip from Margaret Brennan, from Face the Nation. And I'm very critical of her, but she's one of the people who at least shows something about what's happening in Palestine. So let's take a look at what Scott Anderson had to say. He's the director of UNRWA Affairs in Gaza.
19 different aid organizations released a letter this week saying Palestinians are surviving on less than 3% of their daily water needs. Hepatitis is spreading. Wow. Medical evacuations have been halted. Virtually every hospital has been issued evacuation orders. The Pentagon said it has suspended airdrops of food because of the Israeli military action. And as we know, the pier is not really operating. Who exactly is impeding the delivery?
I mean, I think it's a variety of things, not just one person that you can point to. All of the bulk of our aid comes in through Kerem Shalom. It all comes through Egypt, starts at Port Said, goes through the Sinai to Al Arish, and eventually makes its way to Kerem Shalom, where it's brought in then by us to the Palestinian side and then onward for the last mile distribution within Gaza. There's a lot of steps that have to go perfectly right for all that to work. And unfortunately, not everything has gone right. For a time, Egypt was not sending trucks where we had 80,000 metric tons of aid in country we couldn't access. And we've been perpetually playing catch up on the aid situation since October. Not everybody has a tent that needs one. So you have people sleeping outside still as we're 8 months after the start of the conflict. And you highlighted correctly our number one concern at this point, which is access to clean drinking water. Without that, in addition to hepatitis, you have things like cholera and other diseases that can become very prevalent. We could see an outbreak happen very soon. And it's something that concerns us. And additionally, it's getting hot. It's summer. It's essentially you're in a desert. And if people don't have access to clean drinking water, that's a problem for dehydration as well as for disease.
So I find that clip a little bit frustrating because he should have just blamed he can blame Egypt, that's fine. But this is obviously Israel has placed a siege on Gaza. I don't know why he didn't say that. But on top of that 3% need for water, Oxfam also came out saying that the Palestinians in North Gaza are surviving on 275 calories a day. I mean, you're supposed to have a lot more than that every day. That's like 2 eggs and like a latte. Like that's 275 calories. That's not enough to get you through a day. And on top of that, they have no water. I mean, these people's immune systems are completely shot. If you are a developing child, you're not going to develop normally under those circumstances. They're going to have lifelong developmental issues as a problem of this, if they're able to even survive. And there's no end in sight. And like you get little snippets of that in the mainstream media, but for the most part, they're just kind of ignoring the horrors and framing everything around Israel's security, around the plantation owner's security, and just completely libeling and smearing Palestinians who at this point are doing what they have to do to survive against a genocidal enemy. Like, it's actually quite normal. What Palestinians are doing isn't like crazy or out of the ordinary in the sense of what oppressed people do in the face of like this kind of barbarism.
Right.
Like, you have two choices. You either submit or you fight to live. And people are fighting to live, and we call them terrorists and frame everything around protecting the people committing mass murder, protecting them from so-called terrorists who just like want to survive on their land and live in their homes and live in dignity and have some like autonomy and sovereignty over their lives and their people. It's
Right.
just completely insane.
Well, yeah. And, you know, Ronnie, you pointed out how kind of tame this was, his statement was. And maybe part of the reason is that as we speak, actually on May 29th, Israel, the Knesset passed a bill that was designating UNRWA a terrorist organization. And they're going to consider a bill that would lead to the severing of all ties with the UN agency. And of course, as we've covered here and you've covered, Rania, this is a disgusting reality, which is that the United States has defunded UNRWA. I mean, this was based on a lie that Israel spread right after the ICJ decision came down. They needed a distraction. They lied about UNRWA. And other countries that decided to freeze UNRWA funding had the decency at least to reverse that decision once it was clear that Israel had lied about it, but not the U.S. The U.S. has maintained that decision. It's just so disgusting. And of course, clips like this should be on nonstop, but it's not. You have one show that has something like this, and it's a fairly short clip. But by the way, we have another clip for you. We're gonna shift gears and move into Ukraine. But guys, if you haven't already liked this, and I haven't shamed you early enough in the program, we're not even at half the number of viewers liking it. I refuse to accept the reality that like 2/3 of you are hate watching this. So if you've already liked it, don't like it again, because if you like it again, it cancels your like. Everyone who hasn't liked it, like it now. Wilson, let us know when we get to 1,000, which is way too low, but we weren't even at 1,000. If I really should be demanding half of this number, 2,666.
They listen quick, Katie. We just got to 1,000.
All right. I'm being very tolerant with you guys. I really should have demanded a higher number, but I keep my word. So let's take a look at this clip. We got another clip from George Stephanopoulos. And I'm sorry, this is one more John Kirby clip, but it's the last one. Let's take a look at what he has to say about Russia and Ukraine.
Let me ask you about Ukraine. President reversed his previous position and granted Ukraine permission to strike inside Russia with U.S. weapons. What prompted the switch, and are you worried that it's going to draw the U.S. into a direct conflict? That was the president's concern before.
We've been concerned about escalation since the very beginning of this war, and those concerns remain valid.
Really? Don't think so, because you definitely encouraged escalation and definitely blocked negotiations that could have ended this war.
Oh, this mechanic sucks.
What'd you say?
I said this mechanic sucks.
Oh yeah, it does. Yeah,
it's like a scamming. Yeah. It's like a bad snake oil salesman.
No, for you, yeah, bad deal.
Yeah. The president has said he does not want to be responsible for starting World War III. We're not.
Oh wow, how impressive, Ryan! Did you hear that? That's so presidential.
The president doesn't want to be
responsible for launching World War III. That's the kind of leadership, bold leadership, and moral clarity that I want in a president.
Want to be responsible for starting World War III. We're not looking for a conflict with Russia, another nuclear armed power. That said, around the middle of May, the Ukrainians, faced with an incredible amount of pressure on Kharkiv, that town in the north of Ukraine, not far from the Russian border, they asked for some limited permission to use U.S.-supplied weapons against imminent threats just across the border. So we're talking about military emplacements, gun positions, that kind of thing, logistics, staging bases that the Russians were using to create some sort of buffer zone so that they could continue to pound Kharkiv. The president looked at that, talked to the interagency team, made sure he understood all the ramifications of the request, and then approved it. It is limited to the Kharkiv region, and it is limited with respect to the kinds of targets they can hit and how far back they can go.
Listen, we're gonna keep this potential war. We're just gonna go right up to the limits of just before World War III.
Right.
But the president has no interest in crossing that line. But just right up to it.
But also, I don't even believe that, because they keep saying we're not going to give them tanks, and they give them tanks, right? We're not going to give them ATACMS, we'll give them ATACMS. So who knows? And maybe shortly, pretty soon, they're like, well, we are going to give them the ability to trigger World War III. Who knows,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, you slowly make your way up there. You call it something else. I mean, they basically
Right,
have
of
been trying to
course.
trigger World War III for the past like 2 years.
Right.
While saying they're not. I mean, they lie. He's lying. He's like telling you the sky is green.
Right.
Even though you know it's blue. And he's looking up at the sky and telling you as he points that it's green, it's green, it's green. Yeah.
Yeah.
Liar.
Green is too close to blue. Like it's like pink. He's saying
Okay,
it's
so
pink.
yeah. He's basically saying it's like he's like the sky is like yellow.
Yeah,
Does that work?
exactly.
Maybe
Yeah.
yellow.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, you know, this is something that you don't see covered. So this is not a clip from a Sunday morning news show, but I think it's an important piece of context. And Ivan Kachinovsky, who we've had on Useful Idiots, I've also had him on the Katie Halper show. He's a Ukrainian political scientist. And it's important to also mention he is not a Putin fan. He's not a Russian speaking, he's not a Russian, ethnically Russian Ukrainian. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But for those who are seeking to discredit him as like a Putinist, he tweeted out a very scary video. And what this is showing is forced mobilization in Dnipro, which is the native region of Zelensky in Ukraine. And let's take a look at this.
They're literally
trying to drag people to force them to join.
They really don't want to.
They don't, I think. I mean, this is so disturbing. And all these people claim to care about Ukrainians. Look at this.
Okay, but Katie, they have to do that. They have to forcibly conscript Ukrainians so that Lindsey Graham doesn't have to go fight the Russians himself.
Yeah, exactly right. And
this guy is doing a good service to Lindsey Graham,
right,
and John Kirby.
And of course, that's because it's not just about Ukraine and Russia, Rania. This is about Taiwan.
Yes, yeah. Like this guy has to have his life destroyed for the sake of American hegemony in the South China Sea, as well as in East Europe, Central Europe, all of Europe. So really, he's doing a service for lazy American members of Congress, basically.
Right, who want to use Ukrainians as cannon fodder in their proxy war.
That's really sad. That's really, really
Look at this. This is so awful, and we never see this, and it's so disturbing. I should ask Ivan to translate what's being said, but look at this. Can you imagine being forced, and they're going... And they're fighting these wars. They don't have this is why they just they want more weapons, but they don't have the weaponry. Not that we should be sending it, because when we send it, we're just prolonging a war and avoiding
for what? A war for what too? Like a war for what? A war so that the US can place military bases next to Russia so it can have more control than Russia does. Like, it's not like, I mean, this is just so sad because the fallout of war is horrible.
Right.
Like, war destroys societies. It forces people to emigrate. It completely changes the makeup of countries, and it leaves irreparable damage for generations. And it's not fixable. Like, it's you can't undo any of this. I mean, that's just one small episode of all the horrible things that are happening to people in both Ukraine and Russia as a result of a war that is happening because of the US. I'm not taking anyone else's responsibility necessarily out of it, but over this war, we know this war has happened because the US insists on militarizing around Russia, on using NATO against Russia. And this is the consequence of that. And they keep feeding it with more weapons because they want it to go on forever. They don't give a shit about Ukrainians. All they care about is kill. They don't care if every Ukrainian has to die if it means weakening Russia. And that's so sad for Ukraine.
It's so sad. I really found this clip so disturbing. And here, let me just show Ivan's tweet about this. He writes, Forced mobilization in Dnipro and native region of Zelensky in Ukraine. Daily number of such videos of forced mobilization in different regions of Ukraine increased significantly after his new mobilization law came into effect 2 weeks ago. Those who want to fight to the last Ukrainian do not volunteer to fight themselves. And you know what? This reminds me, Rania, like what you just said about the way that they're treating Ukrainians. It reminds me of how Israel and its supporters claim to care about Jews and about hostages, and they really couldn't care less. And they're happy with them dying. They're happy killing them. They're happy shooting hostages themselves. We know that Israel's killed more hostages than they've rescued. And similarly, all the people who are claiming to care about Ukrainians are happy to sacrifice Ukrainians. You know, like, so in both cases, there's a war that's so much more important. So killing Russians, bleeding Russia is so much more important than saving the lives of Ukrainians.
Listen, much like Jews in Israel, Ukrainians are human shields for imperialism.
Yeah.
That's the designation that they've been given in the hierarchical order of imperialism. And it's really sad because it's all completely unnecessary. It radicalizes populations and it just turns places into hellholes in ways that they don't need to be. But the people who make money off of this, the people who profit from and benefit from maintaining U.S. ruling class hegemony over everything, they do not care. But they try to justify this and propagandize about this by pulling at your heartstrings and making you think that they're just trying to help people when it's quite the opposite is true.
Right. Well, let's do a final clip, which is more Doug Burgum, North Dakota governor, definitely trying out for vice president. Here he is on Margaret Brennan and on Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan. And what's interesting is this is a clip that Aaron Rupar tweeted out, and all the people responded to it like it was a real own from Margaret Brennan. So let's take a look at this. Then we'll explain why it's not, I think.
Usual thing that is an unusual thing that this is not. President Trump's not a candidate that's unknown or never run before. They had an opportunity to live their life under 4 years of him, and they had a chance to, prosper, and they had a chance to understand what the world was like, no wars. And now that it's a very different situation. So I think, it's interesting and it's captivating right now to a lot of people. The election is not going to turn on this trial.
The U.S. isn't involved in a war right now either. But
we're involved in 2 proxy wars.
We were then as well, but.
Okay, so the U.S.
They're both full of they're both liars.
Yeah, they're both full of shit. Yeah.
So like this is like you have the God. Oh, they're so dumb. I just don't even know.
Yeah, because both of them are lying, right? One says that there were no wars under Trump, and then the other one pretends that there were the 2 proxy wars that we're now in under Trump. Now, I'm not saying this to defend Trump. I mean, you just pointed out at the beginning of the show, I'll never forgive him for many things, including killing very handsome Soleimani, but we weren't in, and this is not because of Trump. Like October 7th hadn't happened, so we weren't in a proxy war with Gaza. Although you could argue that we're in a proxy occupation, but and Ukraine also happened under Biden. And again, I'm not saying that it wouldn't have happened under Trump. I'm just saying that the way that this isn't, both of them are full of it, basically.
I mean, both of them are leaders of American empire that is constantly at war with the entire world.
I meant both of yes, you're right. I meant both Margaret in this clip. I meant Doug Burgum.
I'm saying they're both liars. Like the evidence doesn't matter who the American president is. America's constantly at war in various ways. I mean, Biden's currently bombing Yemen too, by the way. I like how she's
he just rebranded that war as defensive.
Yeah, and then obviously like he's a liar too because Trump did like participate in many wars. Like the wars have always been ongoing. Like and it's crazy to me that could even be a talking point from either side, which shows how disconnected from reality they are. Because I think both of those people actually believe what they're saying. That's what's crazy.
Yeah. Right. I don't even know if Doug Burgum does though. He strikes me as just
he's kind of a robot.
Yeah,
he's like a robot.
Yeah.
Whatever lab John Kirby was created in, he was created in something similar.
Yeah.
They have a similar way of talking.
That's what we've discovered. So I just want to read some really generous super chats. A Deck says Hillary and DNC committed to the exact same crime and paying for Steele dossier, right? And booking costs as legal fees. I mean, the Steele of Steele dossier, not Michael Steele from the RNC. Her campaign and DNC paid a fine of less than $150K. Please see that using lawfare as a weapon is a danger to us all. I think Dems are scaring a lot of people. Then Sparky, I just wanted, he gives a nice shout out to Rania for her great work on Pierce Morgan. And also another generous one came from Martha Allen. We love Martha Allen.
Martha!
And yeah, so thanks so much for that. Then we got Amin Danya, Israel's original sin of raids and mass murder on the indigenous Palestinians. Israelis are settlers who steal and raid. October was a natural reaction to Israeli behavior, was not unwarranted. And yeah, this has been Monday Morning. And guys, thank you so much for joining. Rania, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Rania Kalik and follow my outlet Breakthrough News on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, the TikTok at BT Newsroom.
Great. Thanks, everyone. And we will see you next week. And Rania, thanks again so much.
Thanks for having me.